founder of DLA Knight. I've got DC Palter with me today, and we're going to be talking about how to get your startup funded. It's one of those questions I think that always seems to be on people's lips, and there seems to be lots of discussion about it. But I've got DC, who is a real VC. And he's going to explain about how we're going to how you can get your startup funded. So the other thing we're going to talk about towards the back end is that DC has a book, a novel, called To Kill a Unicorn, and I've read it. I've got I had a soft copy of it, but so I printed out a page. It's really good, and we're going to talk about that in the last 5 minutes of the chat. But first and foremost, DC, where can people find you?
Well, right here in my tea house, but online, virtually. LinkedIn is a good place, DC Palter. I also have a blog where I put up all of my articles about startups and how to get funded at pitchingangels.com.
And I've been to your blog, and it is a fantastic resource. If you want to know about putting a pitch deck together, how to get funding, it's a place to go. It's a real destination.
Thank you.
So, DC, thank you so much for coming on, and
thanks for having me. I'm really honored to be here.
So how do I get funding from my startup?
Okay, so everybody thinks funding is I put together a pitch deck, I reach out to some angels on LinkedIn, I send them a deck, and they send you a check. And unfortunately, that is a bit of a myth. So there's a few different ways to do it. And I'm sorry, I'm going to go into a little bit of detail here, but
no, we need it. We need it.
There's a few different tracks, and everybody thinks venture capital, angel investors. Angel investors are small, a type of venture capital. That is not the only way to do it. And in most cases, that's not the best way to do it. So I spent my life in venture capital as an angel investor, and I'll come back to that because I know that that's what everybody wants to hear about, and like, how can I find investors? But let me start with, if you can do it without investors, you're better off.
Right.
So
what's called bootstrapping, isn't it?
Bootstrapping is absolutely the best way to go. If you can build your startup yourself, maybe with some of your own money, maybe with some friends and family money, that's great. And it may not just be your own money. It may be that you can pre-sell your product to customers, and maybe you can get paid for consulting for customers to actually build the product that they need, because that's what everybody else needs as well. There's also grants out there. If you're in the US, we have a program called SBIR, which billions of dollars are out there for startups, particularly in things like medical technologies or climate technologies, or anything. You have anything that the military can use for any reason whatsoever, there's plenty of money to help fund that. And that, you get $1 million, $1.25 million, you can get up to a couple $1 million that way in a few tranches. So there are ways of building the business without having to go to outside of your own network of investors. And if you go that route, what you want to build is a profitable business, because you're not going to have, SoftBank coming in and giving you $1 billion to get you to your $10 billion size. You're going to have to do it yourself. So you take that few $100,000, you build your product, you use that, you start getting some customers. Use that to build it up, and the idea is to get to a space where the company is profitable. And then you can decide how much of that you want to pay yourself and how much of that you want to invest in continuing to grow the business. And this is the way most small businesses, or even medium and sometimes even large businesses, are formed. Everyone knows, let's go out and get venture capital, but that is the exception rather than the rule. And if you're doing a consulting business, as you have, Tim, that's the way to do it. If you have, and you can do it with software. The great thing about software is it does not take a lot of money to start it. So if you can do it yourself with a friend or two, and then it's a lot of work, but it ends up being your business. You make the decisions based on the long-term of what is best for you, what is best for your customers, not what is best for investors. And in the end, that means profit. So think about it this way. You build a $20 million business. That is fantastic. A good $20 million business is probably generating 20% the usual profit if you're doing reasonably well. So that's generating $4 million a year in profits.
Profit.
$4 million a year. Okay, so everybody in the venture space is like, $20 million, that's nothing. It's like, no, I'm taking home $4 million a year in profits. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And then you can decide, okay, do I want to go big and build my $1 billion unicorn, or do I want to continue to make $4 million a year and have a very nice life? So absolutely nothing wrong with that route. And if you don't need outside capital, I really recommend that way to go, because then you get to make all the decisions and you can do it for what you think makes sense. Now, let's say you have this great idea and you've built a better battery for energy storage. This could change the world. This could be worth billions of dollars, but it's going to take you $10 million to get through all the research stage. It's probably going to take you close to $100 million to build the factories before you can actually start building quantity. You're not going to do that in your garage, and you may have parents that have some money, but they're probably not going to give you $10 million. No. Definitely not going to give you $100 million if they're anything like my parents. So in that case, you don't have a choice. You want to do this, and you absolutely should do this, you're going to need outside funding. And that's where the venture capital comes in, where it says, we're going to give you a small amount of money, and you're going to take it to the next stage. And then when you get to the next stage, we'll give you more money, and you can take it to the stage after that. So there's a few stages. In the beginning, you do need to get to the point where you can prove that it's viable. That will often be, again, SBIR grants. They're wonderful, or whatever.
And so in terms of that, would normally be called seed funding, wouldn't it? Which is where you're in effect building a minimum viable product.
So the technical term seed funding tends to be used nowadays for the first round of actual investors. But the original term, meaning seed funding, is that's my seed to build my product. So a little confusion over what that means. But one way or another, you're going to need a little bit of money, and it's probably not going to come from big VCs. That you will need to get to the stage where then you have something.
So you basically have an idea, and you have an idea, and what you're trying to do is work out whether the idea is viable.
Yes. And then you need to get it to MVP because, or at least to have, if it's a hard tech thing, then you need to get like enough research in to prove that it's actually going to work, because nobody wants to invest in an idea.
Yeah.
Everybody thinks their ideas are worth billions. Your idea is worth zero. Sorry. Bursting some bubbles there. Zero. Ideas are worth nothing. Execution is worth everything. Come to me with a minimum viable product, prove that it works, show me that the customers are excited about it. Then you have something that investors can put money into as with a valuation associated with it. So you have the stage first. You want to get to your MVP. It's going to take some amount of money, whether it's research grants or your own friends and family, or kind of bootstrapping to that stage. Then you can take it usually to angel investors and small VCs and say, okay, I've proven it works. Now I need money to actually expand it, get it out to the market. And then once you've done that, you have a bit of revenue, you've proven that it works, you can go off to the bigger VCs and get a big, like $5 million or $10 million at that time. So it's a long process. It's a painful process. Everyone's going to be like, well, why should we invest in you? And you have to have a good answer for that. And the good answer is not just, well, I have a great idea or I have a great product. The answer needs to be, why is this a great investment? Because everybody thinks, I've got this great idea, I've got this great product, I'm brilliant, or I've got a brilliant team. Okay, that's a good start. But what is an investor after? The investor is after
a return.
They want to make money out of it. So SBIR grants, they want to save the world. That's great. That's about building something that's important. For investors, it is about showing that this is going to be a good investment for them. And how is it going to be a good investment? It means you're going to get you're going to grow exponentially to like hundreds of millions of dollars in a very short period, like 5 to 7 years. And then somebody is going to come along and buy the company, or you'll do an IPO for billions. And then that original investment is going to be worth a lot. So the pitch, everyone thinks the pitch is, let me just, I've got this great idea. Let me show you how great idea it is and how important it is. It's like, no, that's the beginning, but the goal is to show why, well, a good product translates into a good business, which then translates into a good investment. And that's the story of the pitch, is getting the investor to say, wow, that's that 1 out of 100 investment that's going to make me a lot of money, so I want to be involved in this. So that needs to be kind of the story behind the pitch deck, not I got a great product, but I have the best investment you're ever going to see.
Right.
So I went on a long time, but I think that's 10, 15, 20 years of wisdom distilled down into like.
I think it's fantastic, DC. I think it's, I remember back in 2019, my business partner and I, we came out to San Francisco. And it was amazing, the atmosphere there. You go into a coffee shop and there was always someone pitching something.
Everyone's pitching. Everyone's sitting there writing pitch decks. Everyone's sending it out. Yeah.
And someone said we had this meeting out there, and someone said, you could come here and you could pitch flying pink elephants.
Yes.
And someone would listen to you. Whereas in London, people would say, "Go away." That can never happen.
Yes. Yeah. So that is the venture world. Sometimes, especially around that time, it got a bit bubbly. There were investments in things that were absolutely absurd. There was there was some amount of fraud, as we know from Theranos. So there's been a bit of a pullback, but the idea is still there, that if you have a great idea and you can grow it exponentially, then the odds of success are small, but the returns are so huge that it really makes sense to invest in.
So if I have a good idea, whatever it's called in terms of getting the early money, the first thing I'm guessing I should do is go to my friends and family. But if they don't have the funds, is that about trying to find some sort of angel investor before getting involved with the virtual with the VCs?
So there's kind of an intermediate stage. Everyone thinks, well, I'll just go on LinkedIn, I'll find angel investors, but most angel investors really want to see some sort of traction beforehand. If you come to me and you say, hey, DC, I got this great idea for a new social media or a new streaming platform, I'll be like, yeah, but I don't know anything about it. You come to me and say, I've got 50 companies already signed up to use it, I'll be like, okay, tell me more. So unless I know something about the space, just reaching out to angels is not going to get anywhere until you have traction. Then it's a lot easier to assess. So before then, there's kind of this intermediate stage of, first I'm going to do whatever I can with my own funds. And then what you got to be scrappy. It's like wherever I can get money from, I'll get money from to get me over that. Really, that's the most difficult hump of getting from kind of prototype into like actual something customers would pay for. Once you actually have customers, then it's easy to find investors. Before that, it's really tough. So it tends to be people who are already in your industry. Maybe they're customers, maybe they're suppliers, maybe they're founders who founded other startups that have succeeded, and now they're looking for other things to help out on. Maybe you're mentors, maybe you're advisors. It definitely, may be customers because they're the ones who actually need the solution, and they may be willing, not just to see that they pay to use it, but actually this is so useful that they want to be invested in it. So it's a little bit of all of the above, but it's going to be people who are already in your network. And I tell people this stage, if they're asking for a pitch deck, you're probably talking to the wrong people. If they don't get it in 1 minute, describing what you're doing and why you're doing it, and them thinking that is the greatest thing since teleportation, then they're probably the wrong people to be talking to right now. They're probably more your financial investors who are going to be looking for where is the traction, who's buying it, all the things that you'll have in the next stage, but you don't have yet.
And I agree with you. I mean, I was very lucky. My business partner and I got laid off. And here in Europe, companies have to be far more generous when they lay people off.
Right.
And so, and I pretty much positioned myself so I would get laid off because I wanted to start my own business. So I mean, it's a way of getting funding, and I.
That's right. Absolutely.
And I really appreciate the company that laid me off, because it meant that in that first year we could do what we wanted. We had a very clear vision, and we actually turned down business from SAP because it wasn't what we wanted. And my partner said to me, I came home and said, "Oh, we just turned it down." She said, "Isn't running a business all about winning business?" I said, "No, it's all about winning the right business."
Yes, absolutely. And a lot of people, there's that trade-off, right? Do you get money? You need money. You have to pay the bills. You have to eat. You have to pay the rent. So money is good. You need it. But if your long-term goal is to get to this place over here, and taking the money sends you over there, then that's probably, if you can find any other money, you probably shouldn't take that. Now it may not take you here, it might take you here. That's good. Okay. That gets you in the right direction, gets you pieces you might be able to use. That's better than one that sends you off in a different direction.
So let's talk about your book, DC. I've got, because I got a soft copy, I've got printed out page.
Yes. Here's the paperback.
I rarely read novels. So I read lots of business books, but I rarely read novels. And so I approached it with intrepidation, but I really loved it. I can't. So if people have read Bad Blood, which is about the Theranos, then it's kind of a bit like that. I don't want to put any spoilers out there, but it's a great story, and I really enjoyed it. So, what was your inspiration behind it?
So it's a bunch of different things. One of them was Theranos. And what happened was I was writing, and so I've been in Silicon Valley for a long time. I sat down to write a novel. What am I going to write about? I'm going to write about a startup and some crazy things going on. And I ended up with this startup that was fraudulent. And I was trying to figure out, how are they actually going to pull this off? Why wouldn't people get it? And then I read Bad Blood. It's like, that's how she pulled it off. Okay. So I used some of that. The book was half written when the Theranos story broke, but I used pieces of that. But kind of the original impetus was I do read a lot of novels, and especially like mystery or suspense novels. You see it on TV all the time, right? There's a detective or a little old lady or something who needs to solve a mystery. And what do? They go to their friend, the hacker. And their hacker comes back the next day with a nice thumb drive full of all of the data they possibly need. And I'm thinking, if the hacker can get that information, why do we need the detectives? It's like, there's the story right there. So I said, what I want to do is write a story from the point of view of the hacker, and how do they get in, and what ended up making it interesting for me. So stories about hackers, people don't write them because they're boring, right? Because hacking takes days, weeks, months of sitting there trying things, figuring out what works, what doesn't work. And that's kind of boring to read about. But what actually works most of the time is not hacking to find bugs, but actually tricking people into giving you the information you need. And my character was kind of your typical hacker, your typical coder, very similar to me, who's maybe borderline autistic, who is really good sitting in there at the computer and really bad at dealing with people. And then I thought, okay, but he actually has to get out of his room, and he spends most of his time in his room hacking or working or playing games. He lives in this world of Japantown where
if anyone notices, DC has his tea room.
Yes, this is my tea house behind me, so they'll tie in the story. He lives in this very cosseted world of Japantown where he grew up and he knows everybody. Which was kind of a takeoff on Chinatown. So in Chinatown, the movie, Chinatown means corruption, nothing is as it seems. But in Japantown, everything is exactly as it seems. Everybody follows the rule, everybody parks straight, nobody litters. And this is the world he's from, but he has to get outside that to the rest of San Jose, the rest of Silicon Valley, the rest of the world, and interact with it. He's the worst detective ever because he can't relate to people. And so that ended up being the story that I wrote about, of his personal difficulties in solving this crime, and figuring out what was going on inside the startup, because he's actually really bad at dealing with people.
And you actually take us through waves of different emotion. At the end, there was a tear in my eye. Because of what happened at the end. I mean, I was really upset for days because of that. And but that's what a novel's about. It's about taking you to an imaginary world, and taking you through those different emotions. And so I got a window into the Japanese world, which is not something that I was particularly aware of.
Yeah, so the main character, as I've hinted, lives in Japantown, which is in the old part of San Jose. San Jose, most people don't know, is the center of Silicon Valley. Used to be a Japanese farming community until the internship, where everyone was sent off to camps during World War II. And then Intel moved in and made all the land way too valuable to be growing apricots and prunes on. So it's a different world now, but there's still this original Japantown, and there's still a Japanese community there. And I'm very heavily involved in the Japanese community. And so I didn't intend to start off writing a Japanese character, but that's what came out of my head, because as you can see, I'm in a tea house. I've spent a lot of time in Japan. My life, it revolves around Japanese culture, and my first job was because I spoke Japanese, and I teach Japanese, wrote a book about Japanese. So that's what came out of the character's head. And I'm like, why is this character speaking Japanese? And I'm like, well, because he's Japanese American. So that's how that came about.
And we've had a great comment that it should be made into a movie, and I totally agree.
Well, I would love that. So if you know anybody who makes movies,
it's
please,
all about network.
Please
network, DC.
It is. And the strange thing is, I'm in Hollywood, right? I mean, Hollywood's a few miles away, but I'm in West LA, where everyone is in the movie industry except me, and I'm in tech, and all of my connections are with Silicon Valley, and not with anybody in the LA movie community. So I need to network more, but I'm more like my character, who's like really good behind the computer and not actually real good about getting out and schmoozing, which is what Hollywood's all about.
DC, thank you so much for coming on and talking.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
It's such an interesting way of finding money for people to start up. And I think there's so much myth out there. It's actually been really good to get it from someone like yourself that understands this. And explain it to people. So thank you for that. And the other thing is, thank you for coming and talking about your book. I really enjoyed it.
Of course. Hey,
I really enjoyed
giving me that chance. I appreciate that.
So remind people where they can get hold of you.
So LinkedIn, DC Palter, or my website, pitchingangels.com, or my book website, dcpalter.com.
Thank you so much for coming on, DC, and really appreciate it. And thank you for all the comments today as well. It's been great seeing the comments coming as well.
Yep. Appreciate it.